Hello
Hello
there.
there.
Welcome back to Star Wars in a Galaxy, coming at you all with episode 90. I'm Jacob,
I'm Eli.
and today we are going to be continuing in our chronological rewatch of season 1 of The Bad Batch. We're going to be looking at Infested and War Mantle. These are the two last episodes, or the two episodes of the season which are not the finale, before the finale. So we're starting to get that build up in War Mantle, starting to get that excitement going. Um, so yeah, that's what we're gonna be doing today. Anything else to add, Eli?
No, just welcome back to Star Wars in a Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. I hope you all enjoyed Buck versus Jerry. I forgot to mention that last episode, and I realized I should have. But we're recording a lot of these in advance. But I just wanted to say, hope you enjoyed EC7. We got some great stuff coming with you for EC8. Obviously, you know EC8 is going to be Big Chungus versus Bangers and Smash, and we've been having such a fun time preparing for that, and we hope to bring that to you soon. But no, if you're good, then let's get into the episodes. Summary wise, which one do you want to do?
Um, I guess I can do Infested since
Sure.
you're not a fan of that one.
I really am not.
So in Infested, the Bad Batch return to Ord Mantell, only to find that Sid has been kicked out of her tavern. She has been kicked out, and in her place, a wannabe on the up and coming a wannabe up and coming crime lord by the name of Roland
Roland
has taken
Durand.
over. Roland Durand has taken over her tavern in a bid to help secure himself as the number one crime boss on Ord Mantell and start making a name for himself. However, they do find Sid, who devises a plan to steal a shipment of spice that Durand wants to sell to the Pike Syndicate. And in doing so, she wants to erode his power and be able to take back what is hers. So the Bad Batch, they go along with her. They help her. They steal the spice. Um, they go through these underground tunnels to do so. They have the run in with these insects, which
Erlings.
almost cause a lot of the pardon
Erlings.
the Erlings, which almost cause a lot of problems. They successfully steal the spice. Sorry, wait, I'm having trouble keeping it
They steal the
all
spice,
straight in my head.
but so it's the distraction with what's her name? Ruby. Bolo and Ketch distract with Roland to get him out of there with Ruby. Do you want me to take it over?
I just watched this episode this afternoon. I don't know what's wrong with me. Yeah,
Nothing's wrong with you. It's the episode.
it's a little convoluted. Yeah, you can take it over if you like.
Yeah. So Bolo and Ketch, the two mainstays of Sid's bar, lead Roland out by luring him with Ruby, who he's taking an affinity to. But Ruby gets out of their hands, and Roland manages to see that Sid and the Batch are taking the spice. He then gets them arrested by the Pike Syndicate, who then hold Omega hostage until they go back and get the spice, which they dropped during the rescue. They do that. They might have or might not have provoked the storm of Erlings while they were doing that. Hijinks ensue, but everything is fine, and they get Omega back, and Roland is left alive, although the Pike Syndicate cuts off his horn. And then the Pikes leave Ord Mantell. And that's and presumably, we don't know this for a fact, but like it's very much hinted at the end of the episode that the bar is returned back to Sid's ownership. So yeah, do you want to just like where do we start with this episode?
I don't know. So we just take it from the top, you know. Personally, I think that Omega's natural helping instincts seem a bit misplaced here because in the beginning of this episode, we kind of have we're forced to reckon as viewers with Sid's character, you know, and who she is, because it's a complicated issue, you know. Omega has forged, especially Omega, you know, they've all forged a bit of a relationship with Sid, but especially Omega. Sid has genuinely been shown some kindness to her, helped her out. But at the same time, you know, Sid, she is blatantly exploiting them. She's sending them on dangerous missions with little information. She's not
Yep.
paying them enough. She's trapping them in debt. She's using the threat of exposing them to the Empire to keep them in line. Which kind of begs, or it asks this question, which is a very um it's a very common question in Star Wars, I think. Or questions like this, which is, how far are you going to stick your neck out to help someone that you know would not or may not do the same for you?
Or
You
even
know?
who would, like connecting to War Mantle, or even who would do the same for you.
Yeah.
They stuck out their next big time for Gregor. And none of them knew Gregor. Frankly, we don't even know how Rex knows Gregor.
Yeah, that's a good
Um,
point. That's a good point. Like you have some people like Luke, because I asked Skywalker, who
yeah.
who would go well out of his way to rescue even his worst enemy. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you have someone like Cad Bane, who can't stop being a massive dick to his own droid.
Who is the living definition of
Yeah.
could not give a fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this episode and a lot and this season is all, or one of the things that the season is about, that we've talked about a lot, that we're gonna have to talk about more, is the Bad Batch, and especially I think Hunter. Especially Hunter, kind of, he's reckoning with where does he fall on the spectrum of neck sticking outness, you could say.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with you that I think Omega's judgment in this episode is a little weirdly written, but it's not about Sid. Like Sid, you could kind of fudge it for me. The one that's really weird, and this is kind of jumping to the end of the episode, is that she decides to beg the Pikes to spare Roland when there is literally no reason presented for the episode for her to have any sympathy towards her.
Well,
Towards
I
him.
mean, there's no reason for us to have sympathy because, you know, we've just come from watching the Clone Wars. You know, we as, you know, viewers, we're the omnipotent viewer, we have a more jaded perspective. But from Omega's perspective, you could argue that there's a very strong reason to, which is simply that, you know, she has a very you know, she clearly has a very big heart, and she still has a very kind of optimistic and not jaded perspective on things, and she just doesn't want to see someone get hurt. That could be all there
Yeah,
is.
I think for me it seemed a bit of a stretch. I will just say. I think for me it seemed a bit of a stretch. I would have liked that conversation between Roland and Omega. I thought there was going to be a more sympathetic reason. Like he was going to say something that would really resonate with her, and that she would relate to that. In some way or another, and I think that kind of could have been used in this episode. To again, Roland made their lives a living hell this episode. Why the heck would Omega turn around and she is she is a very noble person, but I just if I find it a bit implausible for me. Yeah,
That's
I
just
find
I
it a
think
bit
that's
of a
just
reach.
who I think that's just who her character is. I think that's exactly what this is showing, is that to her it's simply, it's a matter of, why are you going to hurt this guy for no reason? You
Yeah,
know, like, why would you do that?
yeah.
So
I
it's
guess.
more, yeah, it just shows who she is, and the kind of experiences that she's had, where she's coming from, where she hasn't been through this nasty, brutal war, and she doesn't have such a she doesn't have such a jaded perspective on things, you know?
Yeah.
She sees things very differently from the rest of the batch.
Speaking of Roland, I want to get to this guy. So specifically, I'm gonna let it out here. I'm not the biggest fan of Infested as an episode. I can say I really, really like 14 out of the 16 episodes of the Bad Batch. And Quartered and Infested are the two that are not in that category. And I will and to give some backstory about this, I for that first proto epic confrontation I did on the Bombadcast channel, Bombadcast versus the Nerd Academy podcast, I wrote a question about this episode, and it was asking for the name of the guy who takes over Sid's bar, Roland Durand. I expected nobody to get it because I know that a lot of people didn't like this episode. Scotty actually got it, and he told me later he'd studied for it. I'm like, okay. Again, this was me
Well
writing
done,
trivia
Scotty.
questions when this was me writing trivia questions when I thought like, oh, this was going to be a one and done thing. What like Epic Confrontations was an idea, so I was trying to make it as annoying and as dastardly as I possibly could. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna do the episode from the Bad Batch that nobody likes. But moving on, here's my thing. You cannot convince me otherwise. Roland Durand is the Toro Calican of the Bad Batch.
What do you mean by that exactly?
I feel like they're kind of the same character. That cocky upstart who's dragged into like who's dragged into a situation like the criminal underworld like way too soon, and they think they have control. They're these arrogant, smug,
You
kind
know
of
what? You're right. Yeah,
dickish guys.
you're
Yeah,
right. They're both clearly, they come in with a lot of swagger. They're like, oh, I'm gonna be the next big thing. I'm gonna make a name for myself. And then they just don't really have what it takes.
yeah. And I know that the gunslinger. Not a lot of people like that episode. I think I like that episode a little bit more than a lot of people do. But not because of Toro. I actually quite like that episode in spite of Toro, honestly. Um, uh, but yeah, but like I like those characters, like really like get at me. I don't know why they just nag at me.
Yeah.
And
Well,
yeah,
something just occurred to me to go back to what we were talking about with to go back to Roland and Omega. I think part of the reason that Omega kind of sticks up for him is because she can obviously she's very savvy. She's extremely insightful and perceptive. That's something you know about her. She knows or at least senses that clearly like Roland is not like he's not some like hardened lifelong like brutal criminal. Like he's like starting out. He's trying to fake it till he makes
so
it,
like
you know?
she sees his vulnerability, is what
I
you're
think she
saying.
sees his vulnerability.
Yeah,
She sees that this is not necessarily who he is. And she says as much. She says like he made a mistake. Like he said
yeah,
like she kind of implores them like just chalk it up to a mistake. The subtext of that is kind of like this guy doesn't really know what he's doing. Like he's just trying to make a name for himself. Like he didn't really understand the implications. And from her side of that, he doesn't really know.
yeah.
He doesn't really know who he is. This is not necessarily all that he is or all who he is. So it's not worth treating him like it is.
Yeah, I actually really like that. I quite like that interpretation, and I guess my thing is I wish they had presented that a little bit more. I think this is a theme we have with the Bad Batch. Again, as much as I love the show, sometimes I feel like the subtext needs to be the text.
Yeah, that's sometimes subtext just needs to be subtext, but you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes it does need to be yeah.
Um. But yeah, it's just it's just a really like. And like the bugs appeared in this episode. That's the other thing. The bugs appeared in this episode. The Earlings appeared in this episode far less than I thought than I remember they did. Like I thought it was going to be a major conflict in the episode, like with the bugs. It really wasn't. They spent like a total of 3 or 4 minutes fighting those bugs.
Yeah. Yeah, like I remember that as being much more there wasn't much danger to that with the
There
bugs. It
wasn't,
didn't
and
really.
they set it up as a very Chekhov's gun situation, with the whole like, oh,
Yeah.
don't make any noise, and I knew like immediately. I mean, obviously because I'd watched this episode before, but like also because that's just storytelling. Is oh, they said don't make a noise because it'll awaken the bugs, and then and so that means the bugs must awaken for the story.
Yeah.
And they did, but neither time was it really a huge problem because they just saw that light attracted them away. I mean, Tech made that light bomb, which I guess was cool. Um, Yeah, it's
Yeah, I think one of the problems that the Bad Batch faces sometimes, and that it kind of gets tripped up with, is they kind of they kind of misuse Chekhov's gun, or part one of the main conflict doesn't really hit that hard. I think that's a
it,
problem that they deal with quite a bit.
it's this episode just for me doesn't make a ton of sense. Um, I said this episode, and I will stand by this. Um, Sid giving the backstory for why she didn't own her bar anymore, about Roland taking it over and why he was taking it over, and his mother, who's hardened criminal Issa Durand. That's all more interesting than the plot of this episode.
Yeah,
Like it just is. Like I would love to see that. I mean, I know it wouldn't involve the batch as much. I mean, you could rework the plot to make it involve the batch, but like that is a far more interesting plot than what we got this episode. Um, and for
absolutely. Yeah,
me, for me, like again, and it hits a bit for me because the Bad Batch is a spinoff of the Clone Wars. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like you don't have to watch the Clone Wars to watch it, but come on, having watched the Clone Wars before it is basically like a rule.
yeah.
Again, not
I mean,
again.
that's fair.
I don't want to gatekeep anybody. I do not want to gatekeep anything. I'm just saying that this show heavily relies on the Clone Wars before it and Rebels after it.
Yeah, pretty much all new Star Wars on-screen content at this point assumes that you've watched a truly massive back catalog of
Well,
media
not every. I
in
will
order
say
to
not
understand
everything.
everything.
I will say not everything. I think the Mandalorian season 1 did very good with that.
Yeah.
I
Well, I
think
think the
that
kind of the
I think that Andor season 1 has also done very good with that. Actually,
yeah, I think that the big kind of the live action, especially, the big headliner pieces, I guess you could call them the headliner shows, like Andor and Bad Bat, or like Andor and Mandalorian, the ones that are going to get a lot of attention, the most attention kind of outside of specifically outside of hardcore Star Wars fandom, are going to be more accessible. But then we see shows like The Bad Batch where you're really, really, if you're jumping in for the first time, you're really, really, really not getting the most out of the show whatsoever.
yeah, and
Um,
my point, by the way, about that is that and I was gonna say also but like with Obi-Wan Kenobi, this is what I was gonna say about that. In contrast to Obi-Wan Kenobi, I do feel like there's some stuff you need to have watched before that, in a way that I don't feel about with Andor or Mandalorian. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that I think there are certain Star Wars that fall into certain categories. I feel like in that way, and it's not all like one or the other. It's obviously a spectrum. My point with all of this was, I always look at this episode. What are we getting? Like, what is the characters learning? What are we learning about in this episode? What are we learning in this episode? That the Pikes are bad? We already know the Pikes are bad. There are like 5, 6 episodes of the Clone Wars about the Pikes are bad.
yeah, we we've established that the Pikes are bad.
Yeah. And like the what like the galactic underworld is big, and tangling in it is like really messy. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Um, like what it's been a problem I've had with this episode for a long time. And again, I hate being negative. I really don't like being negative about Star Wars. I want to like this stuff, and there is stuff I liked in this episode, but I'm just struggling for me to find, okay, what are we getting out of this?
Yeah, they could have taken it a lot further in many directions. Even just taking it a little further, I think, would have made it hit very differently. Like, they could have got into, Roland, and maybe, the pressure that he feels, from his mom, and kind of his heritage of his family being, big time crime bosses, and go into that, or like go more into Sid and them, like really kind of reckoning, and them confronting Sid, amidst this rescue, and amidst them like really ponying up to try and help her out, that kind of reckoning
Yeah.
being held, and them confronting Sid, and Sid, acknowledging, maybe grappling, that maybe she hasn't been the most ethical in how that she's treated them. I'm not, there's just a lot
Yeah.
more things. I'm
And
right with you there. I think there are quite a few more things that this episode could have done um to make it a bit more engaging outside of the outside of kind of the oh, this is the adventure of the day kind of thing.
yeah. And I'm not saying, by the way, I reject the idea that any, like, I know this is a common argument I've seen in fandom. I reject the idea that any episode that is not does not serve to move the plot forward is filler. I don't believe that's true. There are great episodes that are character development episodes, but we don't get any
Yeah.
character development in this episode really either.
Yeah. Well, I also think we need to make a distinction between a series. Just because an episode is not very serialized, it doesn't mean that it doesn't move the plot forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I
100%.
think
Yeah.
Rebels is a great example of that. But yeah, it's not necessarily that I despise I'm not necessarily like trying to rail against filler here or call it filler. My point is just that, not every episode has to be like a groundbreaking
Oh,
revelation
absolutely
about the
not.
characters. Not every episode has to be like a philosophical masterpiece. But it is frustrating when you see these things and they feel like they're right there, and just a few extra lines here and there, an extra scene
Yeah.
here and there, a couple minutes allocated differently could have majorly changed the way the episode plays.
And I felt this a lot with
That's when it's a
Corner
little bit disappointing for
too.
me.
I felt this a lot with Corner too. Though I will say, thinking back on that episode, I realized maybe that is one of the things like about like why Hunter's constantly so scared about Omega, and why like I forgot that in this like with War Mantle, I forgot that in War Mantle she didn't go with them. Like that strand led on far longer than I remembered it did. Um and but like again, I don't need everything to be the most groundbreaking anything. Again, that like you said, I'm just wondering, like I can tell you to various degrees what each of the 12 episodes before this like got us in terms of character development, in terms of world building, in terms of story, in terms of whatever. I
Yeah,
can't
I
really
think
pin it down on this one.
yeah. I think it's been very, like I said last episode, that's something that I think is very, very strong about the Bad Batch is they put in a little bit or a lot of character development every single episode.
Yeah.
They don't really miss a beat on that, which I do very much appreciate. But on the other hand, it does make episodes where they're maybe that isn't the focus as much, or maybe it's not as apparent. It does make them kind of stick out.
Yeah.
It does
And
make them
like
stick out a little
and that's
bit.
the other thing, like I get like one of the arguments I was thinking of, I was like trying to figure anything out. I'm like, well, this expands Ord Mantell's world building a little bit. But I'd argue that Rampage does that even more and even better with the whole Zygerian camp and all that kind of stuff. And like the first time they're on Ord Mantell and developing Sid's bar and all that kind of stuff. Like all we get here is the mining tunnels, which are cool, but like, you know, it Infested just a really like again, I think that Rhea Perlman is great as Sid. I think that the D and Michelle Long as the Batch are always delights, but I struggle with this episode. I'm gonna be completely honest with you.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
I'm with you there, to be honest. I am with you
yeah.
there.
Uh, let's see. Uh, do you have anything else, or should we just go on to War Mantle?
I mean, I got some things. Not really, to be honest. I mean, we could talk about, the
You
action
tried.
scenes. We tried, um, they are what they are. Not the greatest, not the one of the greatest episodes. But nothing terrible either. But I think the meat and the potatoes for us is War Mantle.
War Mantle.
If your thinking is anything like mine.
War Mantle is far better. I still have some issues with it, and I'll explain a little later. But in War Mantle, while traveling through hyperspace, in the middle of a mission for Sid, Rex contacts the Bad Batch with another mission for them. They are to rescue clone commando Gregor, who wants out of the Empire after he was sent to be an instructor on the planet of Daro. And they're just trying to get him out of there. He tried escaping, failed, but hopefully they can do better. They land. I forgot to mention, they don't realize at first it's an Imperial that he's an Imperial base, so they get that revelation. Hunter, Tech, and Echo get in, and they rescue Gregor. Along the rescue, they learn that this base is like ground zero for Project Mantle, which is of course the namesake of this episode, which is the Empire transitioning from clones into civilian soldiers. And there's that point where they blast one of the TK troopers, as they're called, and they remove a helmet, and they see it's not a clone face under there. And Gregor explains this to all of them as they get out, and eventually Hunter, Tech, and Echo get Gregor out, but they're boxed in. The Havoc Marauder swoops by with Wrecker and Omega. Omega's flying it. How does she know how to fly it? It's just like a feeling. That's not in the episode, but I could not mention that.
Omega be like, I got a feeling.
Woo woo. Anyway,
tonight's gonna be a good flight.
Ayo. Anyway, so
that is all. Apologies.
So Tech gets on, Echo gets on, Gregor gets on, and Hunter misses. Hunter misses, and he orders the squad to retreat without him. And they leave Daro without Hunter. Hunter is captured by the Empire. He and while being held in a cell on Daro, he gets visited by none other than Crosshair. And in addition to that, there's a tiny subplot with Kamino going on here, where Nala Se was trying to get some of the younger clones off of Kamino. And the Empire figured this out, and the Empire figured this out, and I was just looking up something just to make sure about this. The Empire figured this out and arrested Nala Se and Lama Su, but they said they have use for Nala Se, so they're going to keep her, but they don't have use for the Prime Minister Lama Su. And we see two of their new heavy troopers, non-clone heavy troopers, converge on Lama Su, and the door closes, and that is the episode. I mean, the episode technically ends with Hunter and Crosshair, but that's the order I did it. What do you want to get into with this episode first? Like, there's so much. Wow.
There is a lot in this episode.
There's a lot in this
episode. Opening scene, right after the opening scene, I just want to point out one fantastic little detail. I thought Omega, she's working on Gonki, and she tries to spin her she sees Hunter sitting there spinning his knife, and then she tries to learn how to do the same thing.
That's funny.
With her tool. It was just a funny little detail. I was like, wow, like that's Omega. That's Omega for you. And
like brother, like
character.
Sister. Yeah. And I really like that opening scene. We talked last episode how I'm a sucker for these ambiguous opening scenes. But like the editing was just so great. It was again, we never really fully see Gregor, so it could be anybody, for all we know. And only when Rex calms them do we realize it's Gregor, which makes absolute sense, except for one thing that I will, that's one of my decent issues with the episode that I'll get to later.
Okay.
But the chase with the Massives and the TK troopers and the clone commandos, we see the clone commandos are back, is fantastic. No notes, chef's kiss, love it. Yeah.
It is fantastic.
And I feel like Daro is like the best animated planet, like I think in this season, maybe.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah,
It like
it's just
Jacob and I
jaw
happened to
dropping.
hop in our Zoom session today with the exact same background of Darrow behind us. But no, Darrow is just it just looks gorgeous. It really does. Like even for this show, it is. I feel like they've set the bar at Darrow.
No, Eli, smell. I'm gonna screenshot it.
Okay.
We
Um.
both have the Daro background.
Yeah. Both the Darrow background. Yeah.
On our Zoom call. Um, yeah, man. I mean, I could just rave. I could rave about the animation and the visuals for hours, but man, I was looking at Daro, looking at the scenes. I was like, man, what? Like, it was just absurdly well done. I was like, am I actually in Yosemite right now? Like, what is happening? This is
It
insane.
frankly just looks beautiful.
Yeah,
Um.
as does most of this show. Every
Yeah.
scene, whether it's like the grimy tavern scenes, these beautiful vistas, they do it all and they do it amazingly well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So they get the distress call and they have to decide. And going back to the theme of
Yeah.
choices and choosing
Yeah.
how far do we stick our neck out. We see them have to decide whether to finish the mission for Sid and get paid as Echo suggests, or help Rex
Well,
as Omega suggests.
Echo actually suggests rescuing Gregor. I think it's Tech that recommends going back to Sid.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
right. You're right. You're right.
because I
My
was gonna say
mistake. My mistake. I just mixed up the names.
I like Echo being the driving moral compass here. I wish it was a role he played more during this season, but I love the fact that he is sticking his neck out there for a clone because again, I feel like Echo should be, and this is just my interpretation, the moral compass like of the four, not including Omega, but like the moral compass of the four because he fought under Anakin, he fought under Rex, he learned under like genuinely good people doing genuinely good things. Not that the other three are bad people by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like he is the most noble of all of them.
Yeah, I hope they give Echo more airtime and more focus in general in
Yeah,
season two. I
100%.
think he definitely got the short end of the stick,
Yep.
even compared to everyone else in the Bad Batch in this season. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do with him in season two. Um, but what's interesting also is that Hunter says, I can't remember exactly what he says. He says, "You're sending us to rescue a reg." Like the fact that he's surprised about that as well, that is very
Yep.
interesting to me. That
It
was
is.
that was slightly off-putting. Um, just considering like, hey, you're all clones at the end of the day. Like, don't tell me now you think the regs have no individuality and aren't worth going out of your way for. So it's interesting. What do you make of that?
Well, there's that line if we can jump ahead a little bit that I love, and this is like again, like this is one of the strengths of this show. I feel like the ability, like again, the dialogue writing when it does this is just fantastic. Those offhand remarks that are just like that just make you pause for a second.
Yeah,
It's that
100%.
where is it? It's uh so uh so Gregor, upon finding out that the clone that the Bad Batch are defective clones, he says, "If you ask me, it's the ones who want to stay here who are really defective."
Yeah, great
Again,
line.
offhanded
Great one
remark,
liner.
but again, it makes you think: who is the Bad Batch in the show? Is it the self like? Is it the one that's titled like named, or is it the batch of clones who lack individuality, who again partially not their fault, but who can't think for themselves, who are trapped in an imperial structure, which, as we've seen in this episode, is gonna throw them away when they're not useful to them anymore.
Yeah,
Who's the real Bad Batch in this show?
yeah, and I think that's what makes that line all the more surprising
Yeah,
to me. The one that I was originally talking about. So I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting.
It's one of those great questions, and I really love that those details are getting in there, and I hope that they're that like again, that is I think a question that very much could be, and I hope will be explored in the show is who is the Bad Batch? The easy answer is it's Hunter, Heck, Omega, Echo, Wrecker, and maybe Crosshair. But I don't think that's the answer to the question. Because to answer that, what you gotta understand, what you gotta know what we mean by Bad Batch. What does the Bad Batch mean? Because like on one level, I think my explanation before about the clones, but I also think like that the batch plus like the Force 99 plus Hera and Caleb and Sid and the Martez sisters and Roland in a certain respect and Muchi and all of those outcasts from out of the galaxy. I think in that sense, I think they could be the Bad Batch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's cheesy to say, but a couple of things. First of all, I was wondering when I was going to say this one isn't relevant. I just want to say it, which is the Bad Batch was inside of us the entire time.
The real Bad Batch were the friends we made along the way.
No, but that's actually the one I was going to go with next. The real Bad Batch were the friends we made along the way, which is cheesy as hell, but it actually could be true.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the idea of, I mean, when you really boil it down to what is the Bad Batch, aside from them being clones, you know, they're a group of misfits who've been thrown into a galaxy full of chaos, and they're just trying to find their way. Nothing about that is exclusive to the Batch, you know?
Yeah,
that's something that so many people and characters are dealing with, especially at this time. A lot of the ones that they meet,
absolutely,
in particular.
And I think that there's a lot there. Do you have anything, or do you want me to go? I have something I want to talk about. One of the main issues of this episode, I just want to rip off the Mated with this one, and I can't stand this. And
all right, lead on.
So last time we saw Gregor,
yes,
on Abafar in the Missing in Action, he was, you know, he was buying time for D Squad to escape Abafar, and he got in a shuttle that exploded. In Rebels, which was released before this, he shows back up and is magically alive, and we're like, cool, okay, fine, you know, somehow he survived that. That's fine. He's with Rex now. What?
He pulled an Echo.
Yes, but here's the thing. Then we cycle back retroactively to the Bad Batch, which you think would like maybe explain to us how he's still alive after that solo clash and how he knows Rex. But no. And it even like it's funny because I feel like it's taunting me a little bit because he even had that line. I was in an explosion once and survived. I'm like, yes, but how? And again, I'm not one of those people like we need to know every little detail about anything. It's just weird to me. Like again, the why is always more important to the how than the how. But it's weird to me that they brought him back on two separate occasions and said nothing about it either time.
Yeah, it's possible. It's very possible, probable, in fact, in my opinion, that Star Wars has maybe jumped the shark a little bit when it comes to how cavalier they are about just bringing characters back.
Yeah, and
after
look, they killed Gregor for good
like,
at the end of Rebels. Props to them. They killed him for good at the end of Rebels.
R.I.P. to a real one.
R.I.P. to a real one, but that's a hole in his chest. You know, that's real death, which is something that Star Wars is, I feel like, having
increasingly afraid of
problem with these days.
Yeah.
But it's just so weird to me that like that they made a joke about it when they have no like, and again, not even just how did he survive, how did he get back to the Republic, how did he meet Rex, like. You're just supposed to go with it. And like, you know, we know Rex knows Gregor in Rebels, but that's ahead in the timeline. We like retroactively we can use that. But like if we're watching the chronological order like this, which I'm not saying everybody is, I'm just saying like if you think about it, this is the first time Rex and Gregor is like seem to have known each other, and there's just no explanation for that. Which again,
I think
all this sounds extremely pedantic, and it probably is, but like,
no, not at all. Not at all.
yeah,
It's a valid thing to go, huh, about. I think even just a couple lines, even
yeah,
just that, just a line about like the toughness of the clone commando armor, just something flippant
sure,
that Gregor would say,
fantastic, yeah,
and just sprinkle in one or two of those, and
yeah,
you're golden, or you're much better.
absolutely,
You're much better off than you
yeah.
would be, I think.
And I honestly think that it would not have bothered me so much had he not joked about it later in the episode.
Like
Um,
the fact that they brought it up, but then refused to actually address it, rather
yeah,
than just not addressing it altogether. So you would have preferred if they had just left it all to the imagination.
I don't think that would be good, but I think that would be better than bringing
Mm.
it up and then joking about it and then just like not like what, and it's just leaving it there. It's a little strange. Like again, like talk all you want about Star Wars' vague like explanations of people coming back. I hear a lot of dark, like I know a lot of people are angry at somehow Palpatine returned, dark science cloning, blah blah blah. They attempt to explain it. Whether you like their attempt or not is is irrelevant because they attempt not irrelevant. It's like whether you like it or not is one thing, but another thing is they do attempt to explain it. And Maul, they try to do that too. Like he was kept alive by his rage. I don't like that answer much personally. I know people like that more than me. With this, there is literally nothing. And
Yeah.
it just feels really strange to me. It feels very jarring to me. But I want to get away from stuff I don't like about this episode and to stuff I do like, because there is a lot I do like in this episode. One of
What
the
do you
things
got?
I really like in this episode is, did you notice that they were rushing through the hallways trying to defeat the TK troopers,
Oh, the TK troopers.
which are proto stormtroopers.
Yeah.
Did you hear those original trilogy themes?
I did hear the original trilogy themes, yes. And speaking of original trilogy, it's pretty clear also that the TK, the
TK
helmets of the TK,
421.
the
Yeah.
helmets of the TK troopers are based on the very clearly, heavily based on the original
McQuarrie
Ralph
concept
McQuarrie
art. Yeah. I had that
concept
as a
art
note
for the
too. Yeah.
stormtroopers. I love when shows, when they pay homage to the original concept art, and reuse it and things like that. Maybe that's one of the reasons
Absolutely.
why I love
Rebels.
Rebels so
Yeah,
much.
Rebels does it all the
I don't
freaking
know.
time.
Hashtag shameless Rebels plug.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of my favorite things about this episode is we have seen the Bad Batch living in the era of the imperialized Republic. Yeah, it was called the Empire, but it looked like the Republic, just more militarized.
Well, we're in this era of the
Yeah,
Republic,
yeah,
or we're in this era of the Empire, which we've seen before, where it's with this era of the Empire it's all still Republic stuff, just painted gray. That's
yeah,
the era that we're in.
absolutely. But this is the galactic fucking empire. Like
Absolutely, yeah.
there's no two ways around it. This is the
Yeah.
empire. This is like all the stuff we know and love from Rebels, Rogue One, original trilogy, all that stuff in that era. Like absolutely, they're by the time we come around to Fallen Order, which takes place in a few years,
Yeah.
we don't see a single clone in sight.
Yeah. No, it screams, even just the architecture, the way the base is, it screams Empire, I think. For some reason, I can't remember which episode of The Mandalorian is, but the episode where they raid the Imperial science facility with the
The
cloning
siege.
and the siege. Yeah. This for some reason, this facility just screams the
Yeah,
siege to
and
me.
it
It's
it,
a hundred
it,
percent
it
it's a hundred
screamed
percent
an episode
Empire.
to me like Stealth Strike when Ezra and the crew go to board that interdictor cruiser. Like, they're rollicking around those hallways. It's a classic Star Wars, like, get away from the bad guys sort of thing. And you know what I mean? Like, it feels original trilogy era for the first time. Like, or at least has sparks of that original trilogy era. And by the way, how did they escape from that base on Daro? Do you
Shuttle
remember? Do you remember how they escape?
reactor
It's
tunnel
through an
to the shuttle.
exhaust port,
Yeah.
which is, of course, essential to the destruction of the Death Star in A New Hope. Again, I don't think that was coincidental. I think that this is an homage to the fact that we are very much this is one of the first signs of like one of the first major signs. Again, we've gotten stuff before, that we saw Imperial probe droids, we saw ITO interrogation droids in Common Ground. But like this is one of the first real signs that this is not the Imperialized Republic. This is the Galactic Empire.
I mean, the fondness for bottomless pits is unmistakable.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
It's unmistakable.
Yeah, and it just and it this episode I think does the best job at world building of any episode in this season. And this season does the best job of world building that any piece of Star Wars like content does, I think. Just period. I think this episode is a masterclass in world building. And of the universe building of Star Wars, and I think it's one of the greatest examples I think that Disney Star Wars has done.
100% agree. Absolutely agree.
Yeah, and
it's great. I love the infiltration of this base is so great. And the fact that it's like we said, it's Echo that convinces Tech and Hunter to go into the base to try and rescue Gregor, because they are kind of leaning towards being like, okay, we're way over our heads, we got to get out of here. And then it's Echo who ends up reminding them, hey, you guys did the same exact thing for me on Skako Minor.
Yeah, I love that reference.
Yeah.
I'm shocked that like this is the first time that Skako Minor was referenced in the Bad Batch. I'm shocked that it took us 14 episodes to get a Skako Minor reference in there. Like that was a defining moment in Echo's life.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I really hope that we're gonna see more. Like I said, when we see more of Echo, if we see more of Echo, we better see more of Echo in season 2. I really hope that they kind of tackle Skako Minor and obviously how that impacted him, how it's affecting him, how he feels. But yeah, I think this is very interesting. It just shows that Hunter, he always errs toward making sure to protect his crew and specifically Omega first. And that is really the driving force behind a lot of his decisions. Even when, the old him, the pre-Omega Hunter would have like immediately charged headlong in there, been like, let's get this guy, let's do it,
Yeah, I love that Echo serves as the moral compass again. I think it's a great balance. I also love that little gag of, though I think it's a little overplayed, honestly, but but of the of Echo going, we gotta rescue him. Echo has a point. Tech, it might be risky. Oh, Tech has a point. And Omega's like, we gotta do it. Oh, the kid has a point. I think like good job.
Gotta love Wrecker in this.
Gotta love Wrecker. And yeah, I love that kind of squad camaraderie. And then we get, I feel like, so this episode has two purposes for me. It obviously has War Mantle, which we've covered extensively. And then I think we gotta talk about this, which is Hunter is captured. Hunter slips off. And it's horrible. Like, we see him snap, we see him land in the tree, the branches snap, he slows himself down with the knife, and then we see the Massives surrounding him just like they did Gregor at the beginning of the episode. And it is heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking to see Hunter get captured by the Empire.
Yeah, just hearing Omega's pleas We have to go back
Yeah.
for him. Please go back for him.
Yeah.
Hunter,
And
order
even
them.
Tech, like all of them are at a certain point are
Heart-wrenching.
like he has to order them to get the hell
Yeah.
out of there.
It's a gut-wrenching moment for sure.
It is gut-wrenching. It is horrible. It very, very well sets up the finale. And I love that. And yeah, it's great. And the confrontation between Hunter and Crosshair, like I was hoping to get all of you, but I only needed one, is chilling. They get that epic, like they get those epic bass drums
Oh,
in
I love
that
the drum. I
bass.
love the bass. When
Yeah,
they
the bass
bring in the bass.
for
This is what
for Crosshair. Yeah.
yeah. This is what perhaps maybe too ambitious of a reference here, but this is what Luke Skywalker meant in Hostels on the Hill when he said, "See if you can give it more bass." This is the
Yeah,
bass
very
that he
true.
wanted.
Very true.
Go watch
Luke watched the
Hostels on
Bad
the
Batch.
Hill.
Luke watched
Go
the
watch
Bad Batch.
Hostels on the
Yeah.
Hill by
Go watch bad lip reading, all bad lip reading stuff. We're huge fans here.
Yeah.
Every time uh anytime anybody references Luke's gunner in Empire, I always go, "Hey Dak, you got that back in track? Turn it on."
Yeah. Go watch Hostels on the Hill by Bad Lip Reading if you have
Oh,
not. It's quite
and the
funny.
Seagull Saga,
I mean,
please. The
the
Seagulls.
Seagulls one is the classic.
I was gonna say
Seagulls
the
one.
Seagull Saga, Seagulls in my stick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
chef's
A lot of
kiss.
gems.
Chef's
A lot
kiss.
of gems there. Bushes, can't forget Bushes of Love.
49 times.
Obi-Wan.
49 times.
Yeah.
But
It's
it's
yeah, a lot of
fantastic.
classics. Go check them out if you have not. On
Yeah.
with your regular scheduled
Yeah.
programming.
Yeah.
Where were we?
I was gonna say this is the other problem I had with this episode of War Mantle. And I think it actually could have been fixed very easily. So I said before that I feel like this episode has two aspects to it. You know, the War Mantle part of it, and then the having Hunter getting captured. And I don't think it does the first one justice. I think I think it tries to do a little too much in one episode. And my fix for that, and hear me out on this, is to make it a two-parter and replace Infested with like the first part of War Mantle.
Yeah.
Like it seems for me, it seems a little obvious. But like again, I'm not like again, it's very easy to say, oh, this is what I would have done. But like I'm just saying, like I think that the series would have been served better if we had given the idea of like that hard hitting like Republic literally transitioning into the Empire before your very eyes more time.
Yeah.
And like because I don't really feel like we got into it as much as I'd wanted to.
What would you have liked to see?
I like really if we just made this a two-parter, if we like if they end episode one like part one of this with finding Gregor and then the second one's getting him out, I think that'd be
okay. Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
I think that'd be good. I really do. And again, I like this episode a lot more than Infested. I really do. I just think that like that very much it's like, oh, you see the Republic is transitioning into the Empire, and that just goes, all right, back to the plot. Where as I feel like, you know, in many ways the Republic transforming into the Empire is the plot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it absolutely is the plot, but I think they have to, for the sake of the show, not solely just being hardcore, not necessarily fan service, but for the sake of it, not just solely being
like a lore
okay,
dump.
we're gonna have
Yeah.
like an absolute festival of world building, and everyone's just gonna nerd out and go crazy, and it's gonna be so cool. And like, there's gonna be no actual plot, and we're just gonna like show all the cool, like wacky shit that's happening. Which like I would absolutely love that. Like I would absolutely love that if there's just a show where they're just like, this is like a freaking mockumentary about like the rise of the Empire or something.
Yeah.
But like that is not this show, so I understand where they're coming from. But I also strongly think like the more this world building, the more this scene setting, the better.
And
So I'm
again,
right there
here's the
with you.
thing. For me, it's like also like, yeah, provide more world building, provide some more character development. Also, you have the space because I still don't really know what Infested did. Um, like the episode is literally right there. But again, I've been a lot more negative than I usually like to be on this episode. This episode, I will just say about War Mantle. Again, I've already talked about like how crushing the hunter being captured is. Do we want to get too quickly about the Kaminoan plot?
Ooh, yeah, the Kaminoan plot. I'm a
Yeah.
sucker. You know, I think I gotta bring back one of my favorite catchphrases, one of my favorite things to say. You haven't heard this one in a while. I am a sucker for, peeling
Peeling
back the
back those
layers,
layers. Oh,
peeling back the
Return of a
layers,
King. Return of a King,
return of the
baby.
layers, peeling back the layers like an
Hell yeah.
onion. We're peeling back that Kaminoan onion bit by
Absolutely.
bit, and it just kicks into high
Yeah.
gear, and it's so exciting
Yeah.
there. So
And
exciting.
and very much I love that this is the first sign of this. And I remember we were all predicting this. I remember everybody was theorizing, oh, there's going to be a Kaminoan clone uprising. And this is the first hint that we're like, oh no, maybe there won't be.
Man, maybe the Empire will just crush, completely
maybe the
crush them.
Kaminoans have a lot less power than they and we think they do.
Yeah,
And
I mean, Lama
that
Su
is
finds out as much.
oh yeah. And by the way, I had to check, but like the implication of the episode was that the door closed and then they executed him.
Oh, that's
For me,
absolutely the implication at the end. Yeah, that's absolutely the
there's
implication.
no like it's actually not confirmed anywhere that he died.
Yeah, I think they want to keep their options open, but I mean,
Yeah,
to me, that's like,
but like so canonically specifically, he's still alive technically, but I do think the filmmaking intention was that was that the door closes and then boom boom, body drops to the floor.
yeah, absolutely. Schrodinger's Kaminoan right now.
Schrodinger's Kaminoan. Yeah, no, it's just interesting to me that they inferred that he was killed, but then like didn't actually say it. And again, I'm not saying that's a flaw. I'm just saying like I wonder why they did that. Again, I think they might be keeping their options open, as you say. A lot of this stuff.
I know. I wouldn't be surprised if they just like offhandedly find a way to confirm it in season 2. I think just for the filmmaking purposes, they didn't have to. Like, it's right
absolutely.
there. It's obvious.
But I was in my summary. I looked this up a little early when I was doing my summary in the episode because I want to say, oh, they killed him. I knew like, oh, I can't say that unless they actually confirmed they killed him, and they didn't. So like, it's again Schrodinger's Kaminoan.
I mean, yeah, I love the Kaminoan subplot. I love all the intrigue. So in this episode, they actually have the Empire actually has terminated all their orders. And obviously that leaves, and we see that little discussion with Nala Se and Lama Su, or Nala Se is saying like, oh, surely we'll have other we'll have other opportunities. But like,
and then Lama Su says, the understatement of the century, the Empire is not like the Republic. I'm like, yeah, we noticed.
I think this is such a great moment though, because it's his realization of what has happened when I can't remember what exactly he says, but he says like we have allowed the Empire to like have a situation that is not advantageous to us right now. It's very, the way he says it is very euphemistic, when what he should say is we're royally screwed.
Yeah, we are royally fucked. No, and I think we discussed this in a past episode, but like very much the Kaminoans treat a lot of the people that were in their clone armies like assets, and they're finding out now what it feels like to be treated like an asset.
Yeah, because Nala says like, oh, come on, other people will like want our expertise. We can make clones for other people. And then Lama Su is like, he's like, hell no, are you serious? You think the Empire is just gonna let someone else buy out a massive clone army? Absolutely not. We're done for.
Yeah.
And then they try to escape. I wish we could see that. I wish we could have seen an episode of like Lama Su, desperately trying to escape as she's, dodging the stormtroopers, and then eventually they find her, and then Yeah, that would have been cool. That would have been very cool to me.
That would have been very cool. And I'm tying back. And again, this is we haven't covered this in this episode, and this happens very end of Camino Lost. But there is that scene where Nala Se is taken to the planet of Wayland
Yeah.
by the Empire to pursue some cloning project. Mount Tantus on the world of Wayland, which is a reference from the Thrawn trilogy. It was made it was a cloning facility in the Thrawn trilogy where Thrawn had successfully cloned both he had both made a dark clone of the Jedi Joruus C'baoth, having him become Joruus C'baoth, and then he also made another clone of Luke Skywalker out of the hand that fell on Bespin called Luke Skywalker. But that's a lot of backstory from Legends. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I still think that the Kaminoans are going to have a role in season 2. So I think
Absolutely.
I don't their story is not finished. So very much
far from it.
So very much, and we'll get into this next episode when we talk about Return to Camino Lost, but like I'm wondering what the Kaminoans' final fate is going to be. Yeah. We know the fate of the world, but we don't know the fate of the denizens quite yet.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be super interesting. I think just another thing as well is that it was kind of shocking and thrilling in this episode to see, throughout the series, throughout this intrigue, Nala Se had kind of been the one. She was kind of under Lama Su's thumb. He had the power over her, and she was passionate and personally invested in the clones, but he was the politician. And then in an instant, obviously, Rampart flips that, and he's like,
he flips the script.
Actually, she's the one who's useful. Like you're the one who needs to be like begging for mercy, because
and that like hits me in a specific way because again, that is stuff that they said to the clones. That is basically the plot of Clone Cadets, that first episode that we ever watched of the Clone Wars. Basically, Domino Squad, which includes Echo, by the way, has to basically fight to like not be consigned to janitorial duty.
Yeah.
And to be useful. And again, they end up being very useful. The two of them that are left after a few seasons, anyway. But this is absolutely a Clone Cadets esque dilemma for the Kaminoans, which is so interesting to flip the script like that. But let's see. Do you have anything else for this episode?
No, I thought this was a fantastic episode. The mystery,
I thought it was very good.
The messaging, I thought it was on point.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, I want to talk about some stuff that's happening within the galaxy in the future. We're going to be taking a short break because Jacob and my lives are going to get a bit busier in the coming weeks, but we won't be gone for too long, and I'll tell you what's happening in the future. So this is posting on December 2nd. We're recording that far before then, but this posting on December 2nd. So there will not be an episode out for the next 2 weeks. The 9th, we won't be posting an episode on the 9th or the 16th, but we're going to be doing a lot over the back half of December and January, starting with we are going live Tuesday night, Tuesday, December 20th. We are going live. Let me just check that one more time. Again, I'm right. I just want to make sure. Yeah. Tuesday night, we are going live with Alden Diaz and Tori Fox of Octo Radio. And Eli, you might want to edit this out if this actually doesn't happen. Bill Sheehy, Trey Mitchell, and Jessica Schloth of Skywalking Through the League. And we're talking about the Book of Boba Fett. As you know, if you've been on Twitter, which I know Jacob hasn't, but there's been a lot of discourse about people comparing shows to other shows, and the Book of Boba Fett for me has been bashed a little too much, and I love that show, and I want to celebrate that show because if you remember, 8 days from our stream, it will have been a year since the release of Stranger in a Strange Land, the first episode of the Book of Boba Fett. So we thought both because I want to show the Book of Boba Fett a bit more love, and because it's the 1 year anniversary of the Book of Boba Fett, we would do a live stream, and then we'll continue with our regularly scheduled programming that week. Our next official episode of In a Galaxy will be episode 91, covering Return to Camino and Camino Lost, with, also edit this out if this is not going to happen, Eli, with Boop and John from the Nerd Herder podcast. We've been on their show. I've been on their show many times before. Jacob also has been on their show many times. Good friends, and I'm so excited to get their thoughts about the final 2 episodes of Star Wars: The Bad Batch.
It's gonna be awesome. I can't wait. Although I do have to say, since I am very much a non-Twitter person, especially compared to a lot of the podcasting people. But I will say, I think that discourse, especially in Star Wars, I have to say at this point, I'm just convinced that discourse is a euphemism for the online equivalent of that scene from Community where Donald Glover walks through the door with a box of pizza, and everyone's like rolling around on the ground and like swinging around the shirt that's on fire.
That is the nice way of putting it.
That is a nice way of putting it. Yeah,
that is the nice way of putting it. But again, we believe here at In Galaxy in positivity. Like,
we do.
Ignore everything we said in this episode. We agree.
Well, I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference between like criticizing something that you don't like and like talking about why we do or don't like something, which I think is what we do, and then just like kind of throwing, like, basically mudslinging and getting into shit fights and
absolutely, 100%.
all that
I'm just
stuff.
saying,
and I think like
I'm not saying that we don't live up to that. I'm saying, like, this episode was weird because we didn't like these episodes as much as we'd like some others. So I was saying you might not be able to tell from this episode, but I promise you all of our past episodes indicate that we like being positive on here. And we want to promote a positive space, and that's what we've built our circle around. And we want to continue that going. And I'm very excited to talk with Alden and Tori and Bill and Trey and Jess about the Book of Boba Fett. I'm also very excited to talk about Book of John. I'm also excited for Epic Confrontations 8, which is going to happen sooner rather than later. We'll probably record it in the middle of December. Again, details to follow. If check our social media for updates about that kind of stuff. Speaking of that, so yeah, next week we're off, but you know the schedule because I just laid it out all for you. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter at In a Galaxy Pod for as long as that exists. Instagram at Star Wars in a Galaxy. We now have an account on the new Twitter substitute Hive, which a lot of our Star Wars friends have been flocking to, at In a Galaxy Pod on Hive. Hopefully, like, again, worst comes to worst, Twitter goes down, I will probably also start at OG3Fan327 on Hive. It is now on Twitter at In a Galaxy Trivia on Twitter. Again, probably will start that up on Hive if Twitter takes a turn for the worse. We just don't know right now. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. We will be there. If we're not, email us swinagalaxy@gmail.com. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. We post Epic Confrontations and we do live streams like the stream we're gonna do that I've officially that I've unofficially started calling the stream of Boba Fett. And I think that's it. Until next time, may the Force be with you always.